All right. Hey, welcome, folks. Mil-Spec Opsmic here. It's going to be your SITREP. It is 12/15/2023, and we're coming to you live here from the great state of Texas and the Monkey Lounge as we get into the details of what's happening all around this world. Some crazy stuff. We're going to talk today a little bit about this, what'd you say, engineered, genetically modified mosquitoes. Talk a little bit more about some weather modification stuff and what we aren't seeing, which is interesting because we catch them in the act and they're starting to wipe the flights. So you only do that if you're trying to hide stuff. Also, your agency boys are getting really busy right now. I don't know what's about to pop, but I have a feeling something big is about to go down because of the scrambling that I'm seeing with respect to your agency guys. Okay, we're going to look at them closer. So let's do this. Let's jump over here to our mini board. Let's get into the deets. By the way, if you haven't joined us on Patreon, amazing community, and you get a lot more stuff over there than you ever see on any of the other platforms. So just to let you know, you're missing out on a lot if you're not there. So we'd love to have you, and hopefully we'll see you over there. We made it easy on you. There's a little QR code right over here that you can just hold your phone up to, and it will grab that and take you, just click on it. It'll take you straight over to the Patreon site. So anyway, that said, the sky today, we're sitting at around 226, and I haven't even stripped out the trainers, but there's not a lot of trainers up. We're talking about 30 Tex 2s and about 12 T-38s. The weather here in Texas is rainy, it's nasty, and that is kind of where you get most of your flying here between kind of Shepherd Air Force Base all the way down to around the Houston area. So nonetheless, it's a little light, but what we do have heavy, you can check this out. We've got to H-60s. Those are going to be your Black Hawks, very active this morning. And mainly the focus, you want to see the ones that are up here and other areas. This and the Panhandle, usually some trainer activity, okay? Now we take those off. We go into the tankers, the air refuelers. What does that tell? Look at this, scattered, smothered, and covered. Both sides of the United States, and covering pretty much every area and zone. So 18 of those up, and then we go down a little further. We do have a lot of C-17 activity. We'll look at those closer in detail here in a minute. And then your H-47 Chinooks. We're going to talk a little bit about some Chinook news that I found very interesting. And but there are your Chinooks. If you're not familiar with this helicopter, it looks like the banana copter, right? It's the one with the two blades on it and shaped like a nanner. And yeah, that's the one we're talking about there. And then, of course, we just throw in the Pegasus air refuelers. Not that many up over the U.S., but when you mix them in with the other 20 that are up, you got about 25 air refuelers up over the United States. Again, that's a good indicator that we have a lot of fighter activity over the United States. Now, let's get into the detail. We start out over here on the watch list, and I want to point out the stuff in the Northeast. We're going to drill down on that real fast. That's all survey flights, folks. Yeah, like 32 of them. Okay, so that's a lot of survey flights. We're going to take them off the screen because they do clog everything up. That's going to be an intel bird. A lot of border stuff going on. We see the Texas border side a little further over, more like towards Houston. And then, well, what do we have here? I'm seeing just some regular stuff we usually see. Okay, so the Gulf Streams that we show, all right, the D328s, those are going to be kind of your intelligence side of the house, right? So the Dornier 328s, that's going to be your Uber for your Spec Ops boys. And then those Gulf Streams that we see, those are going to be your gray birds. And those guys are going to be your agency boys. So I'm seeing a lot of uptick on both of those. Now, that right there, again, we've got Brio 66 and an R135 over Europe. And we get down a little further south. And, right, that's going to be gunship, Israeli gunship, more than likely. That's going to be your agency boys. What are they up to? Yeah. Pay attention. All right. Over here to the intel side of the house, as we're over in the Middle East, we'll go ahead and kick it off from there. Just notice this one flight that looks to be coming back and forth. Remember, these aren't drones. This is going to be your intel stuff towards Israel, down towards Gaza. And then that right there is, they're looking very closely at Serbia. There's a lot of stuff happening over there that makes everyone very, very concerned, because if Serbia in the middle of Eastern Europe decides to go hot, it disrupts all the stuff that we have. Our troops that are over there in Romania and the general area, it's right in the middle of the mix between the Middle East and Ukraine and everything else. So notice we have some arrivals or some departures. Can't tell which way they're going. But notice this one. They just parked an Intel bird right down off the doorstep of Donald J. Trump. All right. Notice we have some movement there in Texas and then down towards Tucson. All right. Now let's talk gray birds for a minute. Now the gray birds are interesting because remember, these are usually the agency guys. All right. Notice that in the last time we got together, we were showing you Fort Lauderdale. It's not too far from Trump. Down into Guantanamo Bay. All right. Now, I just showed you the live map where we see them in Europe headed down towards Africa. All right. So this is the last time we got together. Again, that's pretty close to Trump. All right. That's Lauderdale. I believe they have a site down there that they're actually working out of. So pay no big attention to that piece. But this is important because we're starting to see them on the move quite a bit. So let me go back over here to the mini board for a minute. We're going to pop up Guantanamo Bay, and I just want to show you this aspect right here. Notice, again, this one's coming out of home base operations, so they dropped somebody off, and they came back down into Gitmo to pick somebody back up. So where do they head from there? Well, you can see it right here, Washington Dulles, back to D.C. So they took somebody down there that was visiting and took them back. Now, these other ones, these are normal flights, but if I go over here to Guantanamo Bay and I look at the board, you're going to notice that one of the gray birds, right, and I just showed you the other flights. We know we had at least two. That's Thursday, right? And we got another one that has disappeared from the board. It's not on there. So this one here is Washington Dulles, and that's an arrival coming in from Cartersville. That was the one we just looked at on the board. So there are three that we know of. So one of them is no longer on the board. Right? It tells you there's something going on down there they don't want us knowing about. Again, this was the arrival right here. That's a G3, and then it's headed back to D.C. But this is today's arrival, which is interesting. Right? That's today's arrival. That's not. So we go back here and notice you got one G3 coming in from Cartersville on Thursday, 10:37. That board should be the current arrival board. And it is not. We do see Fridays. That's today. So this one came in yesterday, according to the board. So it's still on the board, I guess. Yeah, that's got to be the same one, 504. So still on the board, landed yesterday morning at 10:37, which, like I said, that's typically not how that works. It's typically just what shows up. But you can see Thursday, 10:37, 504. So we are seeing less than what is actually going down there. And we know that because we track them coming in, and then we see them go bye-bye on the board. Now, the interesting piece, too, as I pointed out before, is this is your base commander. We normally don't see that on the board at all, ever. And I see him on here 3 times. So that's kind of unusual. But okay, now let's go back over here to the flight tracker, and let's talk R-135s. Again, intelligence community looking very closely at Russia. Notice they're looking deep into Russia. And then they're circling Kaliningrad. And then they're looking into Belarus. That tells you there's a lot of stuff moving that they got eyes on that they're very concerned about. Notice where we don't see anything over the Mediterranean, over the Red Sea, over the Persian Gulf. That's a training flight down here over Texas. And then these two are not. All right. Now notice that one. You see that side view. That's because that's how that aircraft looks down there towards Chihuahua, or as I like to say, Chihuahua, and then down towards Tijuana. All right. Looking very, very closely at the border. R-135s. All right. Let's talk C-17s. Almost 200 C-17 flights in the last 3 days, but just notice the locations. hot and heavy, the ports. But then notice you're starting to see them kind of scatter into the interior of the country, which tells me, I believe that's a good indicator you've got immigrants on some of these flights. All right. And then the West Coast, right? Seattle all the way down, Beale Air Force Base, California, off into Hawaii, down by LAX. There's Hawaii. And a little bit of movement up in Alaska, all right? Now, let's talk swift flights once we get through the Europe side. Now, the one piece I do want to say is you're going to notice that over into Europe, it's pretty thin, all right? Not as thick as it was. But notice the flights are heading into south of Gaza, not into Israel. It's headed into Egypt and then in and out of the Middle East. Right? That's where they're moving them. Displaced peoples. All right. Okay. Now, and then in and out of Cyprus. That's the other piece too. I think they probably move them via boat and then pick them up from there, right? Put them into Europe and the U.S. Okay, this is Swift Air. Notice the amount that come out of Phoenix Airport, out of the southern borders, and then notice they're headed up Norman, Oklahoma. They get up here into Kansas. They get in, this is the last 3 days, all right? So this is proof in the pudding that they are absolutely moving. That's up into Ottawa, etc., Montreal, the Carolinas, Georgia. They are moving migrants straight direct into our country from these locations right near the border. So that's the first piece of your smoking gun. Now we go over here to the Mini, and you can see what is up on the board right now. A lot of flights in the air. But notice where they're coming out of. Look at this. This is interior. Austin to Cincinnati, Phoenix to Reno, Boeing to, I'm not going to try to pronounce that, Valley to El Salvador. Chicago to Kansas, Tucson to McAllen, Texas. That's a border town, right? Laredo to San Diego, and Ontario to Piedmont. Okay, that's a lot of interior movement right there, folks. That's your smoking gun, right? They're just straight up moving migrants into our country every day and have been for years. Okay, let's talk NASA for a minute. We're going to talk about this weather engineering, but what we don't see, that's more important than what we do see. And I say this is it's important because if they are wiping flights, deleting them off the boards, then they're trying to hide something. They don't want any trace that they were there. Now, this is over on the Airborne Science website that has a map. But you can see on December 15th, 2023, this G4 tail number N49RF was actually flying right here off of Hawaii. Okay, now that gets important because when I start to look at the map, you can see the asset location of all the aircraft. And when I go to this map, which is this means they were just flying probably yesterday. Okay, but I go over here to the map. We look at the NOAA flights. Notice what we see. We got one that looks like it zapped over to the eastern seaboard out over the water. We've got them up near kind of D.C., Delaware. We have them Southern California. But yeah, look out over the Pacific. Back it up. Nothing out there. Right? Not a thing. So they're wiping the flights. So that tells you there's something to all of this, right? They're definitely up to something, especially when we see the boxes all out here that are them doing their studies. And then all of a sudden, boop, not there. Why, you might ask, right? Okay, so let's get into the deets here. Well, actually, you know what? No, I do want to cover, I covered NOAA. Let's cover the weather mod side because I think that's important too. Remember, these are the cloud seeders. They add to and take away. You can see over Texas right now. And if we get into the Texas side of the house, you can see it is pretty sloppy, pretty wet. But what happens is they go up and they spray, and then it pulls it into these storms, and then those storms become pretty violent, okay? And then notice you've got some stuff there. That could be some snow, doing a little cloud seeding for snow. St. Louis is getting it. Get up a little further north into Minnesota. They're getting a little bit cloud seeding. And then you get over here. What is going on with New York in the cloud seeding? Are they doing it to try to reduce smog so that the water just kind of washes everything out? I don't know. And I definitely don't know what they're doing off of Maine unless they have some other technologies they're bringing on board with these seeding operation companies that maybe they're looking at. Maybe there's some LiDAR in there. Maybe they're looking at the lobster traps. I don't know. Let me get over here to Saudi Arabia, which I find interesting all the time because, you start getting into the heart of it in Riyadh. You talk about U.S. troops are over there, and then that's Mecca, Medina. Remember, they add to and take away. So if I back up and I go over there with the weather map, all right, and we just kind of zoom in, notice we don't see anything. Nothing. So that tells you that was probably a drying effort, right? That's all I can come up with for that one. It's just kind of strange. You see them applying the stuff, but you don't see any weather. That tells you they're not adding to, they're taking away. All right. Now, speaking of adding to, you may remember, we talked about this. I know I talked about it in my Monkey Minute over on Patreon, but this is... let's just say we're going to go with initials here, and we're going to say Big Geek releases 30 million genetically modified mosquitoes into 11 different countries. Now, that was in June of 2023, right? 11 different countries. And if you get over into the WHO or any of the other areas, then you start to see that there is a large spike of malaria going on in the world right now. So, anyway. You almost just wish one of these would just bite him on the butt and just, be done with it. But anyway, nonetheless, genetically modified mosquitoes, this is over on the cdc.gov site. And we're just going to drill down and notice right here that they are being released in 2 counties in Florida and Texas. Okay. All right. You tracking? Wow. This is strange. June 30th, 2023, malaria cases in Florida and Texas. Here's what you need to know. All of a sudden, almost immediately as they get released into these 2 states, Florida and Texas, you're seeing the first local transmission in the United States in 20 years. Now, what's funny is that if you go out there, the fact checkers are basically saying this is no correlation. They're not related at all whatsoever. However, we all of a sudden randomly see these massive spikes in Florida and Texas where these are known locations that they did the drop of these genetically modified mosquitoes. What are the odds? You tell me. All right, let's move on. Let's get over here to the horse he rode in on and see where he's headed today. It's Friday. It doesn't look like he's doing anything except for getting through a case of the munchies with old Bob Marley at the White House. So if we go back over to here, I'm not seeing, let me back it up. I'm not seeing any, looks like he's headed home for the weekend. All right. That's the only thing I see on the board. Let me just make sure, check the date. Today's the 15th, and this goes active the 17th and 19th. So Sunday, through probably Tuesday, it looks like he is going to be over on that side of the house. I don't see anything else. I see some space operations stuff going here. And we got a little box down here. Let me see what that's all about. Space ops. All right. So I'm not seeing anything other than that in terms of TFRs on that side. Okay. Let's move away from the horses and let's get into this piece. So here's your Bohica moment. This was just released on the December 12th. The Flashbang administration announces new security assistance for Ukraine. Evidently, he has this package that includes air defense capabilities, artillery ammunition, anti-tank weapons and other equipment to help Ukraine counter this ongoing war. And the total dollar amount, $200 million. Now, this I find very interesting because the AIM-9 missile system, that's aircraft mounted. All right. So does that mean that they're about to start flying aircraft in the area? Quite possibly. All right. Interesting. Huh. Okay. Well, let's move on. Oh, of course, they get some spare parts and generators, maintenance, etc. Pretty soon, they'll be sending soldiers over. Just know that's coming. All right. Okay, here we go. Pay close attention to this one, too. U.S. terror list hits 2 million people, nearly double in 6 years. That says 2 million people worldwide, but it includes thousands of Americans. Now, I've been showing you the amount of intel flights over the United States. I've been showing you the uptick in military intelligence balloons over the United States. I told you for a long time, I've been telling you that they are watching us. All right. And when I say us, I'm talking about the MAGA community. All right. We are on the short list. And if you don't think or you don't know that by now, you haven't been paying attention. All right. They are watching us. And it's, what the real threat is, but they are going to say we are the real threat. And the reason for that is because when they pull the shenanigans that they pull, we do probably become the threat. But right now, I would say they're reading the tea leaves, so to speak. Okay. So nonetheless, they are gathering data on all of us. All right. And that number is probably a lot higher than just that. All right. And here we go. To add to it, fine-tune it. Season's greetings. And this is over on Breitbart. The House passes the NDAA with deep state surveillance authorization. All right. So Bubba Louie here is allowing them to continue to spy on Americans. We already know this guy's a rhino. If you haven't figured that out yet, you will. Okay. 100%. He got plugged in. The fact that the other side approved him to get plugged in. And I mean, we know that all lawmakers up there aren't there for us anyway, but nonetheless, this just tells you, here we go. It's even ties into the 702 FISA piece of the House. But it says here, the House on Thursday passed a defense bill that contains a deep state surveillance authorization, robbing lawmakers of historic opportunity to reform this, right? So they're not touching it. They're leaving that alone, probably adding to it if I had to guess, but just gives you right here, like I said, there's a lot of them that feel like they need to really have a bead on us, we the people. Why? Well, I mean, it. If they're more concerned about us, it's because the shenanigans that they're playing, they know the people are getting fed up with it, and they know that we're only going to take so much. And they've got to be able to identify us early on to make sure that they've got control of us. All right. And if you didn't get this, it's a little bit of good news, but it's bad news too, because you know who's second in line, right? House votes to open impeachment inquiry into Flashbang and all of his illegal acts. Okay. Long overdue. We're down to, the last year of him even being in office. What this is going to accomplish, absolutely nothing. The damage, folks, has been done. So, again, it's just typical of the people that are supposed to be representing us it's too little, too late. They had their chance probably 20 years ago to get all this stuff fixed, and they didn't do so. And then all of a sudden, when you start to get a little fire to their feet, they they find this sudden interest. But it's just noise. It's white noise. And that's what you have to remember, that it's all they're doing is just trying to pacify us. And then they just think we'll just go away. But we're not. All right. Okay, this is a picture of your H-47 or CH-47 banana copter, right? See, it looks like a banana. Paint that thing yellow. It's a flying banana. All right. Now we go down a little further, but this ought to open some eyes Taiwan colonel was offered $15 million by China to steal one of these and fly it into China. 15 million bucks. So think about that. The links that they go to steal this airplane. They were flying this thing in Vietnam, folks. This thing is an old airframe. Why would China want to get their hands on this aircraft? Why? How many of these do you think we left in Afghanistan in the middle of the desert? I'm willing to bet there were some there, right? We know there were other helicopters. Who do you think came in whenever that happened? Right? We bail out of Afghanistan. Who do you think came in and started kicking the tires over there and taking our stuff? China and Russia. First two on the scene. All right. Here we go. Air Force offering up to $600,000 to keep pilots. That's an interesting deal. Yeah, they can't. They have zero pilot retention. They don't want to stay in. So these people are bailing. And so now they're saying that this retention demonstration program will give the most valuable pilots up to $50,000 a year for 12 years if they re-up when their contracts are up in 2025, 2026. That tells you all you need to know about what they see on the horizon and the fact that we don't have enough pilots and that there is a massive pilot shortage, not just here in the military, even on the commercial side, massive shortage of pilots. All right, let's just look at the cyber threat map because this is very important. This is more than likely how we'll get dinged more so than a war here in the United States is the cyber threats. Notice the stuff that hits internally into our own country, right? That's one side of it. Then we get over to this side of it, and you can see the things peppering. Of course, U.S., U.K. number one on the list, but look at the volleys from the three-point line into the United States. All right, this is going to give us a little bit of detail around what's coming in terms of the SLOP and the NOTAMs, but you can see atmospheric rivers just lining up, right? So if you're wet on the West Coast right now, you're about to get wet. So these are ongoing operations, and I don't see any NOAA stuff. I do see the danger boxes, East Coast, West Coast. So you can see this turbulent slop here, big amount. Look at that right there. That's some heavy duty turbulence. And there are flights that are going to go right through that to get across the drink. And that's going to be a bumpy flight. I wouldn't want to be flying internationally right now. All right. And then you can see most of the normal stuff that we typically do see across the drink here. All right, let's take a quick gander as we got just about a minute and a half left just to show you the flights in and out of Biggs Army Airfield. These Hunter coming in from Hunter, one coming in from Fort Worth Alliance, but where are they headed? That's the bigger thing. San Jose, California. Back to Perot Field. We go down a little further, and that's going to be your main two. We got one on the board coming in, National Cargo coming in from Fort Hood down in Texas, a little further south. All right. Dover, we do have a couple 747s coming in. Who is this? That's an Israeli bird coming in from Ben Gurion. Again, like I said before, they're making them come get their own stuff. They're not delivering it to them, which is pathetic. Western Global coming in from Chicago. Where are they headed out to? Ramstein. So they're headed Europe bound. And that one's headed back to Tel Aviv. So they're coming over to pick up stuff for this fight. And here we go. Canberra flights out of coming in from Dover. This is going to be Ramstein. Just notice the spar, right? That's going to be blue and white dignitary coming in from Stuttgart. And it looks like it is up, but destination unknown. And another looks like a base commander coming out of Constanta. Over to RZE Poland. We're looking for 747s. One coming in from Portsmouth. And then that goes to Seoul, Korea from there. So it's headed eastbound out of that location as an Atlas Air. So it'll fly straight over the region there in China and everything else, India. All right. And then the Duke, that's a base commander out of Wiesbaden, headed back to Wiesbaden. Don't see any other 747s. Very light day. there. Camber flights, you see a handful headed into Europe, it looks like, and into the Middle East. So that's Kuwait. And this one here looks to be Romania, if I had to guess. That looks about what that is. Okay, Anchorage to somewhere in China. All right, that's going to be Western Global. And the Brits are pretty busy. You can see a lot of flights headed into Egypt. Here you got one, Cyprus to Egypt. So that's probably where they're picking them up, bring them into Cyprus, and then they're getting sent abroad. Looks like a Kuwait flight, several in and out of Europe. Then we go over here to, sorry, this is Western Global. So that would have been National Cargo earlier, 747. Again, that looks to be headed into Seoul, Korea, out of Los Angeles. That's probably artillery picking some up. And then this is Guantanamo Bay. We've already talked about that one. And so we'll keep our eye on this because very, very strange in terms of the flights being wiped and the arrivals of a lot of agency boys down into that area. All right. All right, listen, that's going to do it for today. I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. If you're over on Patreon, remember, we're going to have the Monkey Minute on Sunday. We'll have Under the Radar on Saturday. That's Under the Radar on Saturday. And that'll do it. So keep that powder dry, stay frosty. And remember, if you want peace, prepare for war. That's it. God bless. Monkey out. Thanks for watching, folks. You can check out the latest gear and products by selecting the QR code on your screen now or go to monkeywerxus.com.